Welcome back to another episode of the Mills Knows Bills podcast. I'm your host, as well as current CEO of MKB, Mills Bender. And with me today, I have a really good friend of mine, Trevor, who is going to talk to us about what it means to be a good business owner, somebody who has great resilience, grit, dedication. And honestly, this topic could not come from a better source. So before we dive in, Trevor, please take a moment, introduce yourself, tell everybody a little bit about who you are, because I know that there's a lot of great accomplishments that we're going to unpack first and foremost.
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having me. Thanks for reaching out. My name's Trevor Cowley. I've been in business with various different business ventures for 15 years. One business that I initially entered in was a struggling business, and I actually bought a business that had zero money in the bank account and $66,000 in credit card debt. So on paper, it really didn't look like a good purchase. But I knew enough about the business that I felt confident that I could turn it around. And, that was in 2010, 2011. And so I invested a little bit of money, and I told them, if I invest my money, it's going to be my rules. You've already shown with your money what happens, right? And so they said, that's fine. And so I came into that organization with the year previous, them losing $200,000. The first year I took over, it was a $700,000 turnaround.
Wow.
Based upon that experience, we wanted to make sure that we isolated ourselves from situations like that in the future. The last thing that you want to do is have a business that has potential and mismanage funds to the point where there's really no money left and the business could potentially go belly up. And so immediately after that, we really focused on building reserves to make sure that the business was a stable business through the ups and downs that all businesses have. And for about 10 years after that, it was just all business. We took some of the reserves, we started another business. We took some of the reserves, started another business. And that's what we've done, over the last 15 years, is just start business after business after business. And, I was blessed enough to do very well financially. And it didn't happen overnight, right? It's like year 2, year 3, year 4, you're kind of making the same money. You're like, when is this thing going to finally kick off some money, And it was right around year 9, year 10 that it really started kicking off some big money for me and my family. And it got to the point where in 2020, I made 7 figures on an annual basis, just personally. Same thing the following year. So I was making enough money at that point to really have the data to say, okay, money's awesome and it does incredible things for people, but it's not absolutely everything for people.
Yeah.
And so the reason why I wanted to share that is that's where really the discipline and the resilience and the grit and stuff, started happening for me, because I found myself at an extremely low place the year that I was making $150,000 a month. And so I was like, okay, well, money can't fill this hole that I have in me. Now what? And so I had to ask myself, what is it that I do when I feel best in my body and mind? And it really came down to, exercising. I love the way that I feel after I get done moving my body. And I love the way that I feel after I get done challenging myself, doing something that maybe I didn't think that was possible or that I could even accomplish, and then accomplishing it. I kind of got that dopamine hit that was missing, that money didn't bring to me, or that I hoped that it would bring, right? And it just really, that domino effect has just kind of played out over the last few years. And so when I was at that low point, I decided to start a challenge where I was going to do 2 workouts a day for 1,000 days. A couple years into that, I decided, well, let's try to run 10 miles a day for all of 2024, while at the same time doing a second workout to complete my original 1,000-day challenge. And I did that. And then that's morphed into, trying to this big mountain, okay, that I'm trying to break a world record for the most consecutive half marathons in a row, which the reason why I say trying and not say that I'm going to is because things evolve. things
Yeah.
evolve and change in business, and things evolve and change outside of business. Recently, I just found out the world record that I was pursuing is no longer the world record. It's extent. Somebody else had the same idea as me, and
Oh
so the
no.
original world record was half marathon a day for 235 days. I was on the back end of Guinness Book of World Records just the other day and saw that it updated to
To what?
555 days.
Almost.
And so that's like, almost a couple years that that I would have to commit to. So, that took the wind out of my sails a little bit. Am I still showing up on a day-to-day basis? Did I get my half marathon in today? Yes. I'm a firm believer of never making any forever type decisions based upon a temporary circumstance where the wind's out of your sails, or you feel like that you're at a low place, or you're up against something that you didn't think that you'd have to be up against. And so I'm going to continue to pursue it. I'm going to continue to show up on a day-to-day basis. And if I have to make tweaks and adjustments, then I'll make tweaks and adjustments. There's a world record for the most half marathons on a treadmill that's 120 days. And I know the guy right now, he lives in Texas, he's breaking it, and he's doing it for 150 days. And so I might let him finish and then sneak in behind him and lose a friendship, right?
Friendship.
Uh, Gain a world record, lose a friendship. And so that's just a little bit about myself in terms of kind of my business transition from really, putting in a heavy amount of work, so much so that I really didn't live life to the fullest for that first 10 years because I
Mhm.
was so like money,
Mhm.
money, money. I'm going to be successful, to the point where when my wife would call, I would say, hey, don't call me while I'm at work. I didn't know how to change from like hustle grind mode to loving husband mode. And it
Yeah.
was like, I was wearing one hat, and it was like, I'm at work, I'm trying to be successful. And I'm not saying I approached it properly. I don't think I actually did approach it properly. Did my way of approaching it work? Did I end up making a ton of money? Yes, I did. And there's many ways to make a ton of money. I'm not saying the way that I did it is the only way to do it. I wish I would have been a little bit more kind or more gentle. I was very harsh, brutal. Um, you know, we don't come into business with a whole lot of information on how to be a boss. You watch movies and TV shows, and the boss is represented in a certain way: harsh, brash, sometimes a little too blunt, aggressive. And so it's like, if there's really no classes on this stuff, like, where are you going to get your information on how to become a boss?
Mhm.
And it's just the stuff that's been shown to us through TVs and through movies. And so I kind of portrayed that a little too well. And it worked, but I was finally got to the point where I made an undeniable amount of money where I was like, okay, money's not going to completely fulfill me. It's going to do what I wanted it to do, which is create financial freedom and security for my family. But if you are not whole as an individual, yes, that part's taken care of, but what about you? And so really I get a lot of fulfillment out of really just pushing my limits, seeing what my potential looks like. And every time I do that, my potential expands. You don't know what you're capable of unless you honor what you're currently capable of. And if you do that, then your capabilities continue to expand, and you keep wondering, like, what else is even possible? And now you end up doing things that, the version of you 2 years ago couldn't even comprehend. And so that curiosity for me keeps me going down that path of like, okay, well, if I'm doing something that I couldn't even comprehend 2 years ago, what's something that in 2 years that this version of me maybe couldn't even comprehend? And so,
Mhm.
but there's that. And then there's obviously still business. I still have businesses and business dealings. And the idea is, how do you make it all work, right? How do you find time for
Yeah.
you? How do you find time for your family? How do you find time for your business without, going crazy in the process? And so,
It's
anyhow,
definitely a tough balance. I
yeah.
think I want to highlight something that you mentioned earlier where you were talking about how you try not to make any rash decisions.
Hmm.
And so kind of going back to when you first initially heard about the updated Guinness Book of World Records, and
Yeah.
you haven't stopped running. You're
No.
gonna keep running and you're gonna figure out what that solution might be while still aiming towards that long goal. And
Yeah.
I feel like there are so many business owners out there where the moment adversity comes against them, they decide to give up on their long-term goal rather than continuing to work toward it,
Yeah.
because working towards that option, it just gives you more options as you work for it, right? Like, work towards the item that's going to provide you the most opportunities. And it might shift a little bit, but you're not going to be open to those opportunities unless you keep working towards them. And
Yeah.
so, go
I
ahead.
I think I think one of the biggest detriments to an entrepreneur is honoring how they feel when they're in a low place and utilizing that perspective. And what ends up happening is
Hmm.
we take that perspective that we're currently in and we project it forward and say, I can't deal with this for the next 5 years or 10 years. And so now your perspective of the future is skewed based
Mhm.
upon the lens that you're currently wearing in that low place.
Yeah.
And the fact is like, yeah, I saw that update. Yeah, it took the wind out of my sails. Yeah, it's frustrating. But like, if I made all of my decisions based upon a low point or when I was dealt a hand that I didn't expect, I wouldn't be where I'm at, you know? And so it's like, okay, this sucks. Let's just keep showing up in a manner that's productive
Hmm.
and get out of the current state that I'm in
Hmm.
so that I can make a decision that's more aligned with what I'm trying to accomplish and who I am as an individual. Because who I am is not an individual at a low point. I'm
Yeah.
at a low point, which is
Yes.
part of the human experience. And so let's not do anything that's detrimental to the big picture just because we're in a temporary, uh, tough situation.
Yeah. I have this rule for myself where, because as a business owner, we have really high highs and really low lows. That's just the
Okay.
cost of
Yeah.
entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
If you want to be an employee, like your highs and lows, they might not be as high, but they also won't be as low.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons to that, right? So my rule for myself is anytime I have some not so great news or something shifts or whatever it may be, I'm not allowed to make a decision based off of how I'm feeling, at least until a week has passed. So, what I normally find is within 5 to 7 days, I feel less annoyed by the situation, or I've already figured out a solution for it. And so, it's all about that going back to being honoring to yourself and the goal that you set and striving towards that long-term goal regardless of the obstacles that come up. And I know I know I've known you for a while, and I know that getting towards the end of those 1,000 days, you were sick for a couple times, and it was really cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
The weather was not in your favor while also being sick. And so how did you convince yourself to keep showing up to finish that 10 miles a day time period?
Well, for me, it's. I mean, your brain is a funny place, and it loves to play tricks on you. When I set out to do some of the things that I've set out to do, I already told myself that you know I'm gonna see everything, every
Mhm.
circumstance, every situation, every excuse, and I just made a commitment prior to that that no matter what, I'm gonna show up every day because a day is temporary,
Yeah.
right? I might not feel good that day, but I could still show up that day.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to kill me. I might be extremely slow. It might feel like it takes a week to get it done, but
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I always tell myself this is just temporary. This
Yeah.
is temporary. And so how you communicate with yourself matters,
Mhm.
right? Because if your brain's starting to turn on you and you're not there to become the individual that is there to defend it, then you're in trouble, right?
Mhm.
Like it's too often that we honor our emotions and not honor the plan, honor the commitment. And so I knew going in that I would see rainy days. I've seen 26-mile-an-hour winds. I've ran in the rain. I've ran in the snow. I've thrown up on the side of the road. But all of those things were just temporary. And we
Yeah.
blow up the temporary again, to go back what we were talking about. And we make the temporary bigger than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be over soon. This storm will pass. Tomorrow will be here. Like, in the grand scheme of things, if I'm out there running 10 miles, that's only going to take 2 or 3 hours. 3 hours if I'm throwing up on the side of the road. There's 24 hours in a day. That's literally, 13 or 14% of the day. Like, I can go home and rest after I did what I said I was going to do.
Yeah.
And going in, I knew that that was going to be a part of the process. So when those days happened, it was like, okay, just go get it done. You could rest after.
Yeah.
Like, this is just a temporary feeling. The last thing that you want to do is say, hey, I did 10 miles a day, except for this one day when I really didn't feel good. Like, consistency is what makes the story an actual success, right? Like, there without the consistency, you can say, hey, I showed up every day for 6 months and then this happened and then I didn't do it, but then I showed up. Like, nobody cares. Literally, nobody cares what you're dealing with, what you're going through. They care about how you showed up, and did you show up in the manner in which you said that you would. The only thing that's impressive about it is the consistency. That's it. And there's a million people that can go run 10 miles here or there, kind of put gaps in between it. But it's very few that have the ability to do it, despite all the situations and the circumstances that you're going to face in an extended period of time. So I wanted to set a goal so big that I knew that I would have to deal with every situation and circumstance. And I wanted to see who I was in those situations. It's easy for me to show up when I have a good night rest and I got a massage the day before and I'm feeling good. I wanted to see if I was who I thought I was. Could I show up and be the type of person that I feel like I am on the days that I have every excuse not to do it? And really, nobody would blame me if I didn't. But at the end of the day, it's really about just the doing is what separates you from everybody else. And so I wanted those days. Like, I look forward to the rainy days or the situations those are the days that are really creating the muscle that I was looking to create when I set the goal.
That's so
Right. The level of difficulty increased and it was easy to say, no, not today. That's the day that I'm going to get the most bang for my buck if I show up.
Yeah. So how do you, because I want to make sure we have time to talk about RBO. And so let's kind of transition this conversation a little bit. How do you find that having this consistency, regardless of circumstances while running, has played a role in your businesses?
Well, first off, everybody in business is going to have those situations or circumstances or the bad days or the throwing up or, whatever it is. Like, the mental resolve that has been created outside of business gets to come with me everywhere in every situation that I deal with, right? I've had, partnership breakups. I've had to deal with buyouts and things like that. There's been difficult situations or circumstances that have happened within business. There's been times where I'm looking at something and being like, dude, this is the last thing that I want to do right now. Same as when I wake up in the morning and it's not, this is the last thing I want to do right now. But the mental resolve that you create in doing something outside of business, now you get to take that individual into business and you're like, okay, this is just temporary. It's going to be you're going to feel so good when you get this thing done. There's a reason why it's there. There's a reason why you needed to do it, because on the other side of that is what you were really seeking, the result that you wanted for your business or the efficiency that you want for your business. And so I get to take that mindset and I get to plug it in at the office and say, okay, I really don't want to, write that email or, do this newsletter or, put together that SOP. Like, it's all the boring, non-sexy stuff that's really going to compound and make a difference in your business. And going out there and doing what I've been doing is all the boring, non-sexy stuff that nobody sees. Yeah, it sounds cool. It's a cool highlight reel to talk about, but like nobody's there.
Yeah.
Nobody's there when it's raining or something. Like I have every reason not to do it. I have nobody saying,
Mm.
"Hey, go get it done. You could do it." As a business owner, you're not going to have anybody around you
Yeah.
to say, "Hey, get this done. Do that task." Like, how are you showing up outside of business to create an individual that's better within your business?
Yeah.
And for me, the business stuff has got better
Yeah.
because I've got better, right? If there's more of you at the party, then there's more of you at the party, right? And so I get to bring more of me everywhere that I
Mhm.
go based upon the mental resolve, the fortitude, the grit that I created out there. Now that same individual is able to tackle things when I see my mind turn on me. I'm like, "Oh, I've seen this before. I've
Mhm.
seen you try to do that, talk me out of the things that I should be doing." It's not going to happen,
Yeah.
right? So the question is who's in the driver's seat? Is your
Mm.
mind in control or are you in control? Because if you're not in control, you're probably putting aside all the things that you should be doing and only focusing on the fun stuff or focusing on like, hey, I want to make a sales call. I want to bring in, everybody wants to bring in revenue.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to go behind the scenes and do all of the boring work that
Yes.
helps make the fulfillment happen at a higher level for the revenue that you do get to generate. And so
Mm.
I think it's super, super important to, you know, get ownership over your mind because the tasks that are going to make the biggest difference in your business are the tasks that are also the easiest to put off.
They really are because they're, like you said, they're not sexy. People
Yeah.
don't tend to want to do them. It's by not having that resilience or that grit, you're essentially just self-sabotaging because you
The,
find every excuse in the book for
every business owner knows what they need to be doing.
yes.
Here's the problem. They don't do it.
Right.
Why are they doing it? Because they're not in control of themselves. I've
Yes.
been on calls with people. I'm like, hey, have you heard of Monday.com? Yeah, I'm aware of it. And I'm like, okay, why are you still using pen and paper? Why
Yeah.
aren't you using it then? I just, I just haven't sat. So in other words, your discipline level isn't where it needs to be.
Yeah.
You can't discipline yourself and do the things that you don't want to do. That's a problem. And if you're having a problem at this level of business, imagine what the problem will be at a bigger level in business. And so
Yeah.
the ABCs and one, two, threes, some of the basic things that I see people dealing with that they know that they need to do, they just keep putting it off. That's a massive problem.
Yeah.
And you're never going to see a high level of success if you can't control you uh, in a way that is productive.
Mhm.
And productive is, like we said, usually the things that you know you need to do, and you've known you need to do it for months now. Whether it's make that phone call, whether it's hire that person. I know I need to hire somebody. I'm like, okay, well, why
Why?
haven't you done it? It's I know I need to get more organized. I know I need to start that marketing campaign. I know I need like it's almost like I got a teenager and every time we tell her something, I know mom or I know dad, and it's like if you why didn't you do it then? I
Why didn't
know I
you
need to do this. This is the same stuff that I hear most frequently
Yeah.
with newer entrepreneurs. I know I need to, I should, I did it. And it's like, stop knowing and not doing. That's really the power.
How much of that do you think is due to overwhelm though? Because I know when I first started my business, there were a lot of, I know I need to do this, but it should not have been my focus or priority at that point in my business. I needed to complete some higher priority items first in order to be better equipped for that next step. Kind of like what you were saying, if you can't handle the smaller side, you can't handle the bigger side. So how much of that I know I need to, I know I should, how much of that is overwhelm versus lack of discipline, you think?
I think more often than not, feeling overwhelmed and saying that you're overwhelmed is a way to justify not doing it.
Love
I'm a
that.
big believer in that, right?
Okay.
So it's like, man, I'm just so overwhelmed. Okay, let's do a time audit then.
Yeah.
Let's really see what you're doing with your time.
Yeah.
Because I can bet that 50% of the time that you're in the office that you should be doing, that you're not doing the things that you should be doing. Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of you're just doing some busy stuff to kind of stay busy and then say, well, I'm really overwhelmed. And it's like, okay, now I don't feel so bad about myself for not doing that thing because it's just because I'm overwhelmed. Like do you not think that I haven't felt overwhelmed? Like waking up on a day that I'm sick and not wanting to go out and do the thing where I'm overwhelmed?
Mm.
Like, but you could still do the thing. Guess what's going to help you not feel overwhelmed and feel empowered? By being more productive. And
Doing
so
the thing.
doing the thing.
Yeah.
Production equals energy. The reason why you have low energy and feel overwhelmed is because you know that you're showing up every single day and you're really not moving the needle.
Yeah.
You're doing all the basic things to maintain the status of your current business so that you don't go out of business, but you're
Mhm.
not doing all the things that you know that you should be doing that will help you advance your business. So let's just maintain our thing and just say that we're overwhelmed and justify not doing the things that we know that we should be doing so that we have a justification to not feel bad about not doing those things when in reality you could carve off time. Hey,
Mhm.
I'm going to put an hour here. This is what I'm going to be doing during this hour. Look at your Instagram, look at your Facebook, look at, how many times are we sitting here doing something and then we pick up the phone and it's like our ADD kicks in and it's like,
Yep.
you
It
know,
all adds up too.
it all adds up.
Mm.
Like you haven't probably put your phone on airplane mode for 3 or 4 hours and actually got into a flow state and got productive. Because when
Mhm.
you're in a flow state, you can be 10 times more productive in
Mhm.
a 3 or 4 hour window than you can in an 8 or 10 hour window. I was talking to somebody in the
Mhm.
mastermind that was like, man, I'm working 10 or 12 hours a day. And I said, no, you're not. You're not. No, just because you're around the area,
You're doing stuff
you're,
doesn't
you're,
mean you're
you're,
working.
you're not working 10 to 12-hour days. Like it's not old school steel mill 18-hour days where they were actually working in 120-degree temperatures, right? Like you're in the general vicinity in which work should be done for maybe 10 to 12 hours. What that shows me is that you're very inefficient at what
Yep.
you're doing and your focus level is like of a kindergartner. You're not controlling your day, you're not controlling your mind, you're not self-disciplined, or you're just flat
Yeah.
out not knowing what the priority is.
Yeah.
And I think part of just not knowing is they if they knew, then again they'd feel guilty for knowing and not doing. And so
Mm.
a lot of the stuff that happens in business is our perception of self and honoring how we feel about the thing. If we feel
Yeah.
overwhelmed, then we're going to honor that feeling of overwhelmed and then not do the thing based upon, well, it's because stamp overwhelm on it.
Yeah.
Well, why are you overwhelmed? Because you feel like you have a million things to do. Okay. So why don't you make it 999,000
Yeah.
rather than like what's one thing that you could do
Yeah.
to kind of chip away at it, right? Like 1,000 days doesn't happen overnight. It happens over 1,000 days. I had to chip away one day at a time. What's the thing that you could do that helps you move the needle
Mm.
while at the same time doing the things that you need to do every day to maintain your business? Yes, you got to do sales calls. Yes, you got to answer your emails.
Yeah.
Yes, you got to have meetings with employees. Yes, you got to have meetings with current clients. Okay. Then where's the time
Mm.
for advancement in your organization? And if you don't really have time to advance your organization anywhere on then it's not going to happen by happenstance. Like it's got to be designed for that.
Yeah. You have to make the time. You have to make the priority. It's like cart or horse. Sometimes you just need to put it in your calendar and be dedicated to it to then let everything else fall into place. But you mentioned Mastermind. I want to make sure we have time to talk about RBO or real business owners. So tell everybody a little bit about what it is and who it's meant for.
Well, it's a group of entrepreneurs that are there to serve each other.
Mhm.
I joined a mastermind in 2019 when I told you that I was in the game for roughly 9 years, and I said 2010, 2011. and was making about the same amount of money for a lot of those years. I joined a mastermind in 2019 and my income doubled and then doubled and then doubled. It was like year after year after year. And it wasn't just, the individuals running the mastermind. I thought I was going to become best friends with Ed Milet and Andy Frisella. I was like, yeah, I'm going to join. I'm going to get their phone number. We're going to be buddies, paying $6,000 a month. You're hoping, to get those type of connections. And like the first day that we showed up, they're like, if you're in this mastermind thinking that you're going to get our name, our phone numbers, and we're going to be text buddies and all, that's not happening. All this stuff. I was like, oh no, so I was like, those were going to be some expensive friends, but I was willing to pay the tab. But what I found out is really what was valuable was the individuals that I got to rub shoulders with. It wasn't Ed and Andy. Like anything that they said, I've heard before on their podcast or it's on YouTube. There's infinite amount of information on ChatGPT or Google or whatever it is. Like all the information that you need to be successful is out there. It exists in a book somewhere, right? The thing about masterminds is the individuals that you get to rub shoulders with, that you get to meet, that are like-minded, because the journey is lonely. Not a lot of people understand business owners. And so being around people that get it, that understand, and then it's like, you have clients that you've met from being in a mastermind, and people do business with each other, and people like doing business. Business partners happen, there's a whole bunch of different things that happen. And so it's just a matter of trying to create an environment of entrepreneurs and letting entrepreneurs be the entrepreneurs and network, mingle, gather the information, utilize other people's experiences, potentially do business together or business ventures together. And so that's what the real business owners, mastermind is really all about. And so I created that based upon the fact that we grew our businesses and we delegated ourselves out of jobs, and so it was like, okay, well, now what do I do with this free time? And so over the years of the podcast, people had reached out, do you do coaching or mentoring? I'm like, I'm a business owner. I'm no coach, And then it got to the point where we're like, okay, we've got time. Let's create the thing that was so valuable for us, in 2019, which was a group of entrepreneurs that are there to learn, to grow, and be resources to each other. And so that's why we created it, and that's why it exists.
I love that. And I think the most valuable part about it is the fact that you are surrounded with other entrepreneurs who are in a similar stage as you are. So you're not going and talking to somebody who's 15 years ahead of you or 15 years behind you trying to seek advice. You're seeking advice from people who are at the same stage or a little bit ahead, depending on who you're talking to. So it helps you tap into that insight, tap into solutions sooner. So it doesn't take you as much time or money to figure out a solution as to how to grow your own business. And so that's something that's been incredibly beneficial.
Well, one person that's doing, $2 million a year in revenue might be great at this one thing. And this person's doing $2 million a year in revenue and they're great at this thing, And so just because they're doing similar revenue doesn't mean that they're great at the exact same things. One person might be a killer in sales and their fulfillment's crappy. They don't have systems and processes. This one's heavy on systems and processes, but has dragged it there and maybe doesn't have sales and marketing. And so that's the cool thing about it is being able to, get what's working for you now. What are you changing? What are you updating? And having access to real-time information without you having to go through the aches and pains of getting that data for yourself to then make the adjustments.
Yeah. And even if there's overlap in businesses in mastermind groups, I find that there's a sense of collaboration or co-opetition rather than competition, which is great. Because, I've met people where they're my direct competitors, but neither of us view each other as competitors because we're targeting different demographics or we're just in different parts of the states. And, we want to just help each other succeed. And so it's been a great way for me to grow my business as well. How can somebody reach out and learn more about RBO?
They can go to joinrbo.com or just send a direct message at Real Business Owners on Instagram.
Perfect. Is there anything else that you would like to share today?
Stay in the fight. and
Stay in.
be and be about it. Be about it. Don't talk about it. Everybody's out there talking about it. That's the world that we live in with social media. Is It's almost like if we're talking about success and we're around it, we feel like that we're doing what we should be doing, when that's just not the truth. I
Yeah.
used the analogy watching my daughter play soccer when she was little. She was always around the ball. And when I talked to her after the game, I'm like, you need to go put a foot on it. You need to assert yourself and go, like, be a part of the game, and she's like, I was, and that I use that analogy because to business owners, they feel like that they're really in the game, but they're not doing the things that they need to be doing in
Mm-hmm.
the game in order to really advance the ball, right?
Yeah.
Just because you're around it doesn't mean that you're doing the right things. Just because you're talking about it doesn't mean that you're going to be successful. You actually have to be doing the things that are required, that
Yeah.
very few people do. We got to understand, we're trying to accomplish something that very few people try to ever accomplish, which is making a certain amount of income that puts you in the top 1% to top 10%, right? So that just shows you that, 90 to 90%, 99% of other people aren't willing to do those things.
Yeah.
And if you can fall in that minority and you're actually really about what you're trying to accomplish, then time is your best friend. And
Yeah.
don't let the temporary uh, emotions or frustrations or situations or circumstances deter you from
Mhm.
what you set out to accomplish.
Thank you. I think that was excellent. And so, if any watchers or listeners would like to learn more about RBO, as Trevor mentioned, you can go to joinrbo.com or send a message to Real Business Owners on Instagram. As always, thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you next week.